Welcome to 5 Dubs by MDDC Press. I'm your host, Rebecca Snyder, the Executive Director of the Maryland, Delaware, and DC Press Association, which represents news media in our region. 5 Dubs focuses on the who, what, when, where, and why of local news media. We'll talk with the journalists about the stories behind the news. You can find more information about our guests in the show notes or on our website, www.5-dubs.com. Welcome. I am delighted to have in the studio today Zuri Berry, who is the new Montgomery County editor of the Banner. So welcome to the program, Zuri.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rebecca.
My pleasure. And this will be an occasional series within the podcast where we highlight the best move that each of our members have been nominated for in the calendar year 2025. So we get to talk about basically your new gig, the best move that the Banner felt they did in all of 2025 was starting the Montgomery County Bureau. So tell me a little bit about the Bureau and sort of why that was the best move.
Yeah, so the Banner made the decision to expand our operations beyond the core of Baltimore into the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And in this specific case, in Montgomery County in 2025, it's our first endeavor outside of that Baltimore core. And, it was just really clear to us, and I think most observers, that the state's most populous county was being underserved.
Mhm.
And so we did some research. We did some market research to just check to see is there something in terms of a demand there for more news coverage. And when we did that research, it became very clear that absolutely there is demand, but beyond that demand, that there was just a real lack of news environment in the county at the time. We were looking at, and it just so happened that this coincided at the same time. Muckrack and Rebuild Local News had did this study, if you will, of all of the sort of counties across the country that looked like news deserts. And Montgomery County was one of them. It had 8.3 journalists per 100,000 people. That's for a county of 1.1 million people. And that was down from, the early 2000s of 40 journalists per 100,000 people. So you get the sense that there was just fewer journalists or journalist equivalent doing the work. And then we get this market research. And so we have this sort of data point that really tells us that, yeah, there's an opportunity here. And of course, all of that says to us, well, does this fit? Does this align with what we're trying to accomplish? And, we had just, not to brag too deeply, but we had just won a Pulitzer Prize. We had obviously been recognized for some of this fantastic journalism that we had done. And we are thinking, I think, internally about how we can continue to grow as an organization and get to a level of sustainability. That's something that we're not at yet for the number of journalists in our newsroom. And so Montgomery County, all of the things were aligning with going into the county and providing news coverage there. And I think it's been a pretty good success because of that.
So, and thank you for that, and congratulations, of course, on the Pulitzer and the amazing work that the Banner has been doing in many of the jurisdictions that you work in. I wanted to kind of understand the nuts and bolts. So when the Bureau opened, I feel like it was mid-spring. Am I getting that right?
It was actually September 15th. So it was late fall.
Totally awesome.
So we're having the conversations internally May, June, July.
Okay.
I came on board in July as the executive editor for Montgomery County, and immediately started the hiring process to bring on and onboard a bunch of journalists to get this bureau launched. And so that occurred over the months of July and August and into early September to get the bulk of that team together. Now, mind you, at the same time, we conducted a poll. We did listening sessions. We did all of these sort of little things to sort of draw up interest in our journalism and the work that we're doing, and obviously provide some distinct reporting and coverage that we could launch with. And so it was a pretty remarkable, I guess, 3 or 4 months, if you will, to get going.
That's
Um,
you really jumped on it for sure.
yeah,
I was curious, the Banner covers Baltimore City, County, Anne Arundel. You go a lot of places. What was the strategy behind saying, "Okay, we've got an executive editor for Montgomery County," sort of like it's almost like it was a separate publication in some way or
yeah.
news site?
Yeah, so if you go back to the beginnings of the Banner, I think Stuart Bainham, our founder and chief funder, he obviously has looked at the Banner as a potential model of what you could do if we started a news organization from scratch as a nonprofit. Could we then create something that's sustainable that can be replicatable elsewhere?
Mhm.
And I think the opportunity of going into Montgomery County provided us with enough distance to start looking at it in those terms. Now, has that changed over time? It actually has. So, like, we started with this perception that it would be almost like a fully separate entity, if you will,
Right.
even though it's all within the organization, the Venetolis Institute for Local Journalism. And so, my role sort of came about because of that thinking, right? Which is to say that we need a top editor, if you will, to oversee this and also any other additional expansion opportunities within that region, right? And so now we're talking about Prince George's County and things
Right.
like that. But with the goal of being like, okay, can we create a distinct group of people, zero in on a structure, if you will, of journalists that we know we can deploy in Grand Rapids. I'm just naming places, okay?
Mhm.
That's not in any plans. But my point being is that can we take that sort of cluster or type of group of journalists together and then recreate what the Banner has done in Baltimore, in Montgomery County, and elsewhere? And that's certainly a part of the thinking. I think it's evolved a little bit then since then.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about how that's evolved. I mean, the benefit of having the best move of 2025 or being a
Yeah.
nominee for the best move of 2025 is that it's still ongoing. So, can we talk a little bit about lessons learned and sort of what you when you stepped into maybe framing it this way, when you stepped into the role in July, what did you think you were getting into? And now that you're 9 months in, I guess, what does it feel like now, and what have you learned?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we talk internally about the lessons learned of the Montgomery County launch as well. And part of it is just giving ourselves enough time to build up a well of stories that we can really launch with and really draw people
Mm.
in.
Mhm.
But also about the mixture of journalists that we bring in. And I think I'm very pleased with the group that we have and the people that we have working with us. But if there is a one place that we would tweak or we would look more closely at in the future, it's about the journalists that are focused on what we call the top of the funnel work, and those are typically our express or breaking news reporters.
Mhm.
We recognize, I think, how critical, and I think most news organizations understand how critical breaking news is to the entire operation.
Right.
Yes, we love our enterprise and our investigative pieces, and that really draws people in and keeps people a subscriber and sort of sustains us. But our breaking news really feeds the habit on a day to day basis. And I think we recognize that, maybe we could have leaned more heavily into that and that would have helped us grow faster,
Mhm.
if you will. And
Well,
so
and
we think about that going forward. Yeah.
I'm curious because, MDDC does white label readership surveys, on behalf of our members, and one of the things that always comes up, that the thing that is literally most important to readers is always that breaking news. And so, um, uh, I'm curious, the listening sessions and sort of the research that you did to build up, what what did people say they wanted? Did they tell you it was breaking news, or were they like, "Oh, no, we really, we want, like county meetings and things like that?"
I can tell you for a fact, Rebecca, no one ever said breaking news is the thing that they wanted. It is almost always something else, and I do think that the great thing about the Banner and its reputation in the state at this point in time, and again, it's still a very young organization. But people understand that we have done some work that has some real depth to it. And that is sort of the expectation in terms of all of the journalism that we produce. Whereas, and there's I think a gulf, if you will, with respect to the vast majority and the bulk of the work that we do is sort of the daily grunt work of journalism, the accountability work that happens on a day-to-day basis. It includes that breaking news, that sort of some crime bits, but some arts and culture, some things to do, things of that nature.
Mhm.
um, and what we found, not just from what people tell us, but from how they respond to our journalism, is that those are the stories that really get people engaged on a day-to-day basis. So we're really sort of zeroing in on the things that people react to, or engage with, I should say, in terms of our
Mhm.
journalism, while also trying to balance and make space for, again, this is not a new problem, right? You've heard this before. Make space for and ensure that we continue to do that enterprise and investigative journalism that we need to do.
Right. Um, I and so actually, I guess now is a good time to check in and be like, what is what has the effect been? Like, are you, I'm sure obviously you went from 0 to something,
Yeah.
but are you on track with your projections? Is this progressing how you expected, or what's the effect now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Sort of how is it resonating, if you will? I'll
Mhm.
take it in that way. And I think what we started with was a very healthy number of people who had said, "Oh, the Banner's coming to Montgomery County. Let me sign up. I want to be a subscriber
Mhm.
to that." Right, and that was about 2,000 or so people. Right, at the time when we submitted our to this category of best moves, we were at about 8,000 subscribers. Now we're close to 9,000,
That's
right?
terrific.
And
And
that's
just for
just a
the Well, let's just
yeah,
contextualize that for people following along. Like you, if you're Johnny on the spot, you're submitting your entries in December. If you're
yeah.
like most people, you're submitting in January with the deadline of January 31st. And we're recording this at the end of February. So it feels like, does it feel like a snowball trajectory? Is it like a
Yeah.
quick growth, do you feel?
Uh, and there's been some ups and downs with it, right? And
Okay.
it is a responsiveness, I think, to our journalism. When we are active in sending out breaking news alerts, clearly that resonates with people, and that they're picking up and they're engaged with us in that way. But also when we have a big piece come out, when we do our enterprise work, we certainly get a response there too. And so I think that there's there's no clear sort of like we're a straight line up. I'm not going to
Right.
say that. It's more like the stock market. There's some ups and downs, if you will, with respect to people determining that they want to make a subscription out of their support for us.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like there's been this push pull that you want to kind of feed the beast with breaking news and have that immediacy, but also counter that with real enterprise or investigative journalism. And
Yeah.
so there's always fun breaking news. And I have two parts to this question. Just want to know your exciting breaking news, your most exciting breaking news scoop that you all were able to do. But then I also want to know, what are you most proud of in an enterprise or sort of long form way in your time? Because I know you've been sort of, that's a slow build. So what was the quick adrenaline hit, and then what was the long term um, enterprise story that you were really excited to bring forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me go to the that breaking news bit, right? And I wouldn't say it's something I'm super like excited about, but I think it's a story of great interest, and it was something that came up in those listening sessions that we did. People told us they were very concerned about pedestrian safety. There had been more fatalities in the county than that they had than in prior years, and it was something that we had our eye on. We had pulled the data on, and we were sort of monitoring. And then there was a teenager that was struck and killed
Mhm.
over on University Boulevard in Kensington, and it's a very sort of dangerous strip. There had been some changes with respect to the speed limit there. There had been some speed cameras that were there that then disappeared and somehow reappeared after
Mm.
this incident, which we reported out. And so there was a real issue there. But as you know, Rebecca, for many of these incidents, particularly for fatalities that you're not out on the scene for that night of, it's really hard to sort of capture the who, what, if you
Right.
will, the background story of the people that are involved. And what I appreciated about this was that I think, and this is where we differentiate ourselves, we've kept following up. And we
Mhm.
followed up and we got to know the family. We did a door knock and we talked to the family. We got to know who this young man was, and the circumstances that occurred at that intersection. And that sort of really sparked interest from a lot of people because
Mhm.
that's not something that they had not been accustomed to. Again, we're new to the county. People sort of expect the same. Oh, you're going to write that little brief about this incident occurring, and then you're going to move on and you're never going to look at these things. And our whole sort of game plan has been like, no, we're going to follow up. We're going to see
Mhm.
what happened afterwards. So that was the first situation or first story, if you will, of breaking news where we went and got a chance to talk to the family. Thankfully, they gave us some time to talk about this incident and what it had occurred and what it meant to them to lose their son.
Mhm.
And so that was a significant piece of breaking news. And then in terms of just enterprise and the things that we've done, I mean, we just published this story and this is an ongoing thing now at this point, but we've been really holding the county executive feet to the fire with respect
Mhm.
to the Dickerson incinerator. This is a promise that he made that they would close this incinerator for environmental reasons, um, really without uh, other options or
Mhm.
options that were feasible because of the finances behind it all. And so we were doing this sort of ongoing accountability work on multiple levels. But for this story, for data centers, I mean, there's a bunch of enterprise that sort of have bubbled up, and we've got these storylines that we're continuing to attack over time. We'll set it up with a nice big piece, and then we'll keep following up. And so I'm excited about those type of stories and how they're developing.
Well, and I love how that kind of really, sort of proves to the community over and over again that you're there to stay. Um, and also, I mean, sometimes breaking news just sort of backdoors into it is shorthand for a larger issue
Yeah.
that, like pedestrian safety, that's not a very sexy issue until you have a way into that work. And so do you feel like that I know you said that was part of the game plan, but do you think that that really is how do you think that's baked into banner coverage, and do you see it in other areas, that idea that you take sort of that, that germane yet low-hanging fruit, that immediacy, and then build it into something different? Is that philosophically how you like to approach the work?
Yeah, I think of the work as being people centered, focused, people story focused. So if the accountability means that, well, there's something obviously wrong with the infrastructure, if you will, in the county, in this case, with respect to unsafe roadways, etc. If we can find somebody, a family, and use that as a vehicle to tell that larger story, then absolutely that's the way that I think we operate. You can go back to our award winning pieces, our the journalism that we've really become known for, and it has a great sort of either character or a family interest story, if you will, in the background there.
Mhm.
So it is part of the sort of banner DNA to have great personal human stories.
Mhm.
And then, of course, lots of reporting behind that too, right? Not just sort of leaving it and just having it being character only, but there are also lots of reporting details that need to be in there too. That's the sign of a good signature banner story.
Mhm. Well, and I wanted to ask, when we talked about those details and sort of the hardcore reporting that goes into those stories, you have had an amazing opportunity, and the Banner has had an amazing opportunity to build a newsroom from scratch, and
Yeah.
that's not easy for sure, and I would never say that it was, but when you were and you've worked, in a variety of settings, you were at the Boston Herald, you've had your own, media agency, you've done, podcast audio work and so forth. when you were sort of given that charge, and I know it's a team effort, to build that newsroom, what and earlier you were talking about the mix of reporters.
Mhm.
What were you hoping to build? What do you think is the ideal newsroom for sort of that's required by the work today?
Um, well, we can go in a lot of different directions here.
I know. It's kind of fun.
uh, let me start by saying and put myself in the mindset of Zuri in July and August. I really wanted people who embraced the idea of this being a startup newsroom,
Mhm,
who understood that that yes, we are a startup nonprofit and we're 2.5, 3+ years old. But we really are trying to start something new with this thing in Montgomery County, and that our structures and our processes may not be all of what they could be, but we're going to figure it out together.
mhm,
Are you game for that? And on top of that, are you also, competent, capable, and, committed to sort of really doing something cool and new and exciting? So I think attitude was a big part of it, right? Which
mhm,
is to say, how would you approach that particular issue? And clearly there's a lot of talent out there, and I'm very happy with the group that we came back with. People who just so happen to be available at the right moment, if you will. And then beyond that, just thinking about sort of skills and things that we want to bring to bear within that newsroom, we obviously want people who can do that digging, that enterprise level work, and do so fairly quickly. Right, and
mhm,
not everyone is capable of doing it. I think with a tempo. I think every journalist I know is certainly capable of doing more and certainly going in depth. But if you ask them to, condense that 3-week investigation into 1 week or two, then it becomes an issue or a problem, right?
mhm.
And so we were really looking out for somebody who could do those kinds of quick turn enterprise, and we've got a couple of people we feel really good about that. And obviously we needed somebody who we felt like could be really representative of the community, right? People who had roots in Montgomery County, but also people who, could speak the language, whether that is somebody who could speak Espanol or somebody who obviously, knows their way around Potomac or whatever may have you, right? Like culturally, like understand the place. And I think that we spent a good considerable amount of time making sure that we had the right mixture of people to do that. And I feel really good about where we ended up with.
Mhm. Do you feel and how many reporters what does the newsroom look like now in Montgomery
It's a
County?
9-person newsroom, right?
Okay.
Myself, we have the news editor, and then we have reporters that cover local government, growth and economic development, education, breaking news, if you will, and food, arts, and culture. We have a couple of people for that.
Got it. Okay. So, I mean, that is really that's a robust growing newsroom. Are there still sort of gaps, or are you feel good with the bureau as it is? Do you feel like you're still gonna grow it?
Let me tell you, I think any editor who tells you that they don't want more resources is crazy.
Good point, good point.
There are always gaps and there are always things like, wouldn't it be great if we had something else for? I feel really good about the team that we have now.
Mhm,
But if I were being frank and submitting a budget request, I'd say I need another express reporter, and I would like somebody to focus on health and like a couple of
mhm.
different things that I know like need specific attention.
Well, in that specific attention, I wanna go back to the listening sessions you did and some of the research that the organization did. And also, let's make clear, you didn't just hop on to the Montgomery County Bureau without having experienced the Banner because you had done some other work. You've been with them since 2023, right? So you've
Yes.
done some different things. Um, so I mean, what a joy to be part of those listening sessions and whatnot. But tell me how that research really came about. Did you just, go in and be like, all right, we're at the public library, come and tell us what you want? Or, what did that look like and what did you find out?
Yeah, it is actually not that complicated, right? It is a bit of just prompting and sort of just listening to people as they sort of gave their ideas, right? And so we would go into the public library, whether it's Rockville Memorial Library or elsewhere, and we were in Silver Spring at the Civic Building there. We were in Germantown at the library there. We were in Poolsville at the town hall there. And we would go into these spaces, and I would essentially say, "Look, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to accomplish in Montgomery County. Now, there are some things that I know are of interest because some people have emailed me and wanted to talk to me about this, or have suggested this. I've got data centers that are on my list. I've got what's going on with the ag reserve. I've got all of these different topics that we can talk about. Let's how important is that to you? Let me ask you right now, how important is that to you? Can I get a show of hands, right? Okay, am I missing something here? What did I miss about this that I didn't understand? Leave it open ended.
Hmm.
Leaving it open ended in that kind of way allowed for people in the community to then start speaking up and saying, well, I think you can add this thought here. This is something that really concerns me about data centers, or what it may have you. And then as that initial conversation gets going, it just really opens up the room to, okay, what else do we want to talk about?
Hmm.
Now that we've broken that ice and we feel comfortable enough to respond, and that I'm not a crazy person, I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to, acknowledge what you just said. And we may have a little back and forth about it. Now that you see that I'm a real person and we could talk normally, now we could talk about anything.
Hmm.
And that really opened it up for a lot of other people to bring their stories forward. And I'm really proud to say all of the reporters joined me on those listening sessions. It really allowed for us to, one, pick up story ideas, one, two, talk to people in the community and get their phone numbers, emails, and make sure that we were able to connect with them for further storytelling and opportunities. And then three, I want to say, point us in the right direction in a lot of
Hmm.
cases. I mentioned pedestrian safety, but there were other sort of stories that we picked up on that we were able to attempt, and including stories that we're still working on right now.
Hmm.
And so that's, a couple months later, 3 months later since our last listening session. So I feel really good about that. We're gonna do more community events this year,
Hmm.
and they will be, I think, altered just a little bit because we've gotten going and it's less about us starting and it's more about us keeping engaged.
Sure.
But I really like the idea of getting out in the community and having folks have an opportunity to engage with us, talk with us, and let us know what's on their mind.
Well, and I think two things just strike me as listening to that process. One is talking about, sometimes I think news media has we get a little bit in our heads and we're talking about the journalism and transparency and like, the fate of democracy and whatnot. When a lot of times people just want information about what's happening in their community. And it's more like, these are the topics that I wanna know more about. It's not always as deep as, like, journalism with a capital J, and so, like, approaching it in that framework, I think, I'm curious if you think that, you know, making it that accessible was helpful to you to be and then secondly, the other thing that strikes me is that when you just go to a public area, you're not and this is the benefit of being a startup, you don't have to say, "Tell us about our coverage," or what you like or what you don't. You can just say, "Tell me what is important to you."
Yeah.
And you don't have to get hung up on, are they a reader? Are they not a reader? Are they gonna engage? Have they engaged with my content? So
Yeah.
you're getting a more pure cross section. So,
Totally.
what do you think about those 2 points? Am I off base in how that brings success in?
Yeah, just um, I think that there is a great emphasis, just from myself and the team, on making sure that we are engaging with communities that may be underserved a little bit
Mhm,
more, right? And again, looking at Montgomery County as a whole, we're talking about a community that, the primary focus for a lot of the reporting is from the sort of top down, right? Which is to say the county government and the board of education and schools, but really not much further deeper than that, right? And so when you go into some of these communities, we're talking about Germantown, which is the second largest community in the state. This is a place that the severely lacks attention with respect to coverage and what's going on there. Gaithersburg, this very large city that just sits at the top of 270 there, and it's just it's criminal how little attention and coverage it's received in
Mhm.
that community. And so we show up in a place like Poolsville and we want to talk to people. And just the presence of being there, echoing what people are saying, and then going back and actually reporting on the issues that they deem to be important. Well, that is a tremendous thing for that community.
Mhm.
It puts them in a place where they feel more heard and more seen than they had been in the past, and it allows for them, I think, in their point of view, to get their message, if you will, across to elected leaders that may be more focused on Silver Spring or Bethesda or elsewhere,
Mhm.
right? So that our goal is again to sort of lift those voices up. That's the sort of thinking, if you will, behind that. And of course, show up in the places where the stories of interest occur.
Mhm.
We're always going to do that regardless, and I think that's, if you will, a little bit beyond just the community listening sessions, but just making sure that we're doing the things that we need to do on a day to day basis to draw readers in and to bring attention to ourselves.
Mhm. And I'm curious because earlier you were talking about how when you were crafting the room, it seemed so intentional that you needed, these skills, these people, and the
Yeah.
way that you went through the county in geographically. But I'm curious, m- um, w- did you draw certain people into those listening sessions to make sure you had the right people in the room
You mean in
for what
terms
you
of the
wanted to do?
audience?
Mhm. Yeah, like, were you like, "Okay, I need a community activist, I need someone from the faith community," or did you kinda just let it be organic and just say
It was organic, and, surprisingly, many of those groups showed up. There were, times in which we were requested to do a community listening session in a specific place, and that brought in a different type of crowd of people. But we essentially announced ourselves that we were doing this, and we try to reach out to our sort of network of contacts and let people know, hey, we're going to do this thing in Rockville. We're going to be here on this date. I hope you can join, right?
Mhm,
And these aren't rooms that are like 200 people; they're like 50 people.
mhm,
But that 50 people are super engaged, and oftentimes they're activists, sometimes they are elected officials, sometimes they are prospective elected officials, and so there's a sort of real civic engagement that's already there in a lot of these cases. And other time it's just people who are very democracy oriented, journalism focused, if you will,
mhm,
heavy readers engaged in I think a real positive way. Um, but it certainly draws, I want to say, a type, and I think that type is
mhm,
an engaged person.
yeah. Well, and people who are there's all that research that shows those who read news media are usually more engaged in the community, and you never know if that's chicken or egg, but
Yeah,
there's definitely a symbiotic relationship because
yeah,
people want to be invested and knowledgeable about their communities.
yeah,
So I'm glad that you all are continuing that and planning to do some community events. And so I wanted also to ask because it's in today's world, sort of when you're working in a community or covering a community, it's not just necessarily the stories that you're writing, and you have a real background in in audio and podcasts, and then the Banner has also started to do more events. Do you see other kind of wraparound? I guess products makes it sound trite, but like elements that you're bringing in to help the bureau cover the county a little bit more?
yeah, yeah. So one of the critical, so part of that early market research that we did in Montgomery County told us that there was a certain amount of people that only receive their news via social media. I mean, this
Mhm.
is not new to anyone in our business. They all know that social media is a driving force in a lot of different ways. But it was significant enough for us to recognize that, okay, not only if we look at Montgomery County, but if we look at Prince George's County and beyond, that there is a trend line that says people are only getting their news from TikTok or Instagram or somewhere else, right? And so we have already, I think, sort of built the model for what it looks like to have a creator on staff. We have a
Mhm.
very prominent one in Krishna Sharma in Baltimore
Who
who
is
does
amazing.
fantastic. Yeah, he does fantastic work for us, and what he really does is draw people in. He distributes our journalism, transforms it, if you will, to this new medium that allows for people to experience us in a different way that might even make them think that we're fun or cool or whatever. And then, of course, they have an opportunity to come back and check us out in terms of our text-based journalism. And so, when we looked at Montgomery County, it was like, well, clearly we need something like that within the county as well, because we see this huge audience of people, this sizable group of people who only receive their news and information via these channels.
Mhm.
And so we created the creator and social editor role that is filled by Rondez Green for us. I'm super excited about him. He comes from the creator community and not necessarily the journalism community. And so having him on board has gives us an in, if you will, with communities that we otherwise wouldn't have. And of course, it's fantastic that he's worked in the county before. He's also a Bowie State grad, and he speaks Spanish as well. Like he's like
He's the
all
whole
the things.
package.
Yeah, he's all the things. And he's got boundless energy. And so, a creator before that had thousands of followers on his TikTok and his Instagram. So all of these sort of positives, if you will, allows for us then to talk to and I think communicate with these audiences that are really, I want to call, hard to reach. And I think that's
Mhm.
what we're all sort of worried about in our industry. And as long as we continue to try and reach those audiences and connect with them, with people who look like them, who sound like them, who talk like them, et cetera, I think we're in a pretty good place. And that's sort of how we've approached it.
Well, it sounds like it really has been an art, and I recognize you're not no one's ever finished. It's
Yeah.
all continuous revelation. It sounds like you're in a good place, and so I wonder, do you feel like you now have a model? I know you're looking to go into Prince George's County as well, and opening up other areas. Do you feel like the model that you have is that you can replicate it, or are you still feeling like you're building the plane?
We are absolutely building the plane, but we feel really good about the model.
Mhm.
And let me also say this and take it back to what we were talking about very early on, how we've sort of evolved our thinking, if you will, right? Now that we're talking about going into Prince George's County and what the Montgomery County Bureau really needs to succeed in all of those things, we recognize the sort of symbiosis with the Baltimore headquarters and our statewide coverage and how that supplements and complements what we do in Montgomery County and how that's going to be critical for supporting a bureau in Prince George's County. Right.
Mhm.
So we know that there's a certain group of journalists that we need, a top flight editor, some express reporters, but also some people focused on local government and education. We know we need those things, and they can be supported with editors back in Baltimore, as well as statewide reporting efforts that we're doing in order to continue on with this a statewide coverage effort that we're embarking on.
Mhm.
So I feel really good about us sort of building that out. Um, the Montgomery County sort of helped us really get, I guess, focused, if you will, on that,
Mhm.
and it does, I think, speak well to sort of the growth of our organization, but also the focus of our organization as a statewide entity.
Wonderful. So what else is there anything else that you'd like to share about your best move or the bureau as we start to look ahead?
You know, I think it's really remarkable the reception that we've received in Montgomery County. Um, again, this is a county of a million plus people, and we've only scratched the surface. Like we could do so much more, and we will continue to do so much more. Um, Part of what has allowed for us to move into the county and be as successful as we have been is because we have really, I think, taken on the very important but also costly task of marketing and promotion in a
Mhm,
way that I don't think many organizations really have the capacity to do. If there is a superpower to the banner, it is our business and marketing teams that really support our journalism.
mhm.
And so I feel really pleased, blessed, however you want to look at it, if you will, of being in this role and being like, well, I get to work on all this great journalism and work with these great journalists all the time and engage with people in the community. But I am super, super lucky to have a whole team behind me making sure that our stories are getting pushed out on your Facebook and Instagram feed, that they're going on YouTube and Hulu and Roku and all of these different places in terms of the digital marketing efforts, that you see are signs and billboards on WMATA and on the Red Line train and at movie theaters and all of these other places. Um, Without that effort, there is no growth.
Mhm.
Without that work, people don't discover us. Otherwise, we're shouting into the wind, and so I'm really appreciative of that. That's a big part of what we're doing in Montgomery County, and will be in Prince George's as well.
Well, it sounds wonderful, and I feel like there's so much more you can do in all those in both those jurisdictions and in other places as well. So congratulations on heading the best move for the banner in 2025 with
Thank you.
the start of the Montgomery County Bureau. Can't wait to talk to you more about new initiatives and other things that you have going on. But thanks for coming to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to 5 Dubs with Rebecca Snyder. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts so that others can find us. What do you want to know about local journalism? Email me at rsnyder, SNYDER, at mddcpress.com. Interested in supporting our podcast and journalism? Please donate to our 501c3 Press Foundation. Find out more and see the full episode list and show notes at www.5-dubs.com.